The Virginia sun beat down on Langley Air Force Base, its heat a faint echo of the fire that once burned in my heart for Ethan Brooks. In my past life, I, Sophia Carter, was a dreamer with stars in my eyes, destined to be the lead dancer in the National Arts Ensemble. This prestigious troupe performed for troops and dignitaries across the country. My audition had been flawless, every pirouette, every leap a testament to years of training in the base's community center, where I'd spun my dreams into reality. But love, or what I thought was love, changed everything. I gave it all up for Ethan, a charming soldier, with a smile that promised forever. I handed my role to his childhood friend Emma Lane, believing his whispered assurances that our future together was worth more than any stage. Ethan was ambitious, a young enlisted man with big plans but little means. As the daughter of General William Carter, a decorated Air Force officer, I carried a legacy of discipline and honor. Ethan saw opportunity in that legacy. He leveraged my father's name to climb the ranks, moving from a grunt to a staff officer with a speed that raised eyebrows among the brass. I didn't mind. I loved him. I believed in us. When he confided that a training accident had left him infertile, I swallowed my disappointment, vowing to build a life together regardless. My days were filled with supporting him, writing letters to his widowed mother in rural Ohio, sending money to his younger siblings, and managing the household while he chased promotions. I cooked, cleaned, and budgeted my dancer's grace, confined to scrubbing floors instead of commanding stages. Years blurred into decades. My hands grew calloused, my body weary from the weight of responsibilities I'd taken on without question. Ethan's career flourished, each medal pinned to his chest, a silent tribute to my sacrifices. I never complained, not when his late nights at the base turned into weeks of absence, not when his letters home grew curt. I told myself it was love, that my role as his wife was to carry the load so he could serve our country. But love, I learned too late, can close your eyes to the sharpest betrayals. At 65, my body gave out. I collapsed in our modest home on the outskirts of Hampton, Virginia, my heart racing as the world dimmed. Paramedics rushed me to the hospital, the sterile lights of the emergency room glaring down like a spotlight on my final act. Ethan stood by my bedside, his colonel's uniform crisp, his face unreadable. The doctors asked for his decision. No resuscitation. He said, his voice cold as the tile floor. She's suffered enough. I wanted to scream to demand why, but my breath failed me. The monitors flatlined, and I slipped away alone on that cold operating table, my life's dreams reduced to a flicker extinguished by the man I'd loved. As my consciousness faded, I felt a strange weightlessness, like floating above the stage I'd never claimed. I saw my life in fragments, every moment I'd given to Ethan, every dream I'd buried for him. The pain of his betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. How had I been so blind? My father had warned me, his stern voice echoing through years of arguments. Ethan's not who you think, Sophia. He's using you. I'd dismissed him, accusing him of elitism, of not understanding love. As my soul hovered in that liminal space, I realized how wrong I'd been. But this wasn't the end. A spark of something, hope, maybe, or defiance, kept me tethered to existence. I wasn't ready to let go when my story felt so unfinished. If you're as captivated by tales of betrayal and redemption as I was by my own unraveling hit, that like button, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel for more stories of second chances. Because mine was beginning, and the stage was about to light up in ways I never imagined. The hospital room dissolved, replaced by a void of swirling light. A voice, not mine, whispered through the ether. Your heart's truth has earned you a second act. It was as if the universe had taken pity on my wasted life, offering a chance to rewrite the script. My sacrifices, my pain, they weren't for nothing. They were the price of wisdom, the key to a new beginning. As the light intensified, I felt my body reform, my memories intact, my heart pounding purposefully. I was no longer the broken woman who died for a lie. I was Sophia Carter reborn, and this time I danced to my own rhythm. The afterlife wasn't what I expected. No pearly gates, no eternal rest. Instead, I drifted through a haze of light and shadow, my soul caught in a strange energy current that pulsed with the weight of my past. I saw the world I'd left behind, not through my eyes, but as if projected on a giant screen. A news broadcast flickered into view, its anchor gushing about a military retirement gala in Washington, D.C. There, in dress uniform, stood Ethan Brooks, his arm around Emma Lane. She was radiant, her dancer's poise, now legendary as the National Arts Ensemble's star. The camera panned to their grown son and daughter, both in their 30s, beaming with pride. My heart stopped, or would have if I still had one. Ethan had lied about his infertility. Those children, that life they were his, built on the ashes of mine. He spoke to the reporter, his voice steady, rehearsed. For the sake of my family's safety, I had to let my wife suffer in silence all these years. Now that I've retired honorably, I can finally make it up to them. The camera caught their embrace, a picture of devotion that mocked every sacrifice I'd made. My entire life had been a lie, a stage play, where I was the unwitting fool propping up Ethan's ambitions while he built a secret family with Emma. Rage surged through me, hot and raw, as I tried to scream to claw my way into that televised moment and demand answers. But I was formless, powerless, my grief a storm, with nowhere to land. Then came the truth about Emma. She'd known about me, about my sacrifices. In my past life, I'd caught glimpses of their closeness. Ethan fetching her uniforms, sharing his rations, always prioritizing her over me. I'd believed his excuses. Emma's had a hard life, Sophia. She's like a sister. But the broadcast revealed more. Emma had used my father's connections too, securing her rise in the arts world while I faded into obscurity. My love for Ethan had closed my eyes to their affair, and how they'd orchestrated my downfall. I'd given up the lead dancer role for her, thinking it was an act of love. Instead, it was the first domino in a chain that led to my death. The realization shattered me, but the universe wasn't done with me yet. That same cosmic voice from before echoed again, clearer. Now your soul carries the weight of unfulfilled dreams. The stars align for a second act. It wasn't divine judgment or random chance. It was a celestial reckoning, a rare alignment of fate that granted rebirth to those whose lives were stolen by betrayal. I felt a pull like gravity drawing me back to the world. The light around me pulsed electric and alive, as if the universe was stitching my soul into a new body. A surge of energy, bright, searing, tore through me, and I understood this was my chance to rewrite my story, to reclaim the dreams I'd lost. When the light faded, I was 18 again, standing in the humid air of Langley Air Force Base, a phone pressed to my ear. My father's voice crackled through, stern but laced with worry. Jacob Thompson. General Thompson's youngest is a captain at 25. He's got a bright future, Sophia. Isn't he good enough? If you stick with Ethan, don't expect me to call you my daughter. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of memory. I saw my past life clearly now, every moment I'd chosen Ethan over myself, every warning my father gave that I'd ignored. Tears stung my eyes, not for Ethan, but for the girl I'd been so eager to please, so blind to truth. Dad, I said, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. I'll listen to you. Inside, my heart churned with a mix of grief and fire. I mourned the decades I'd lost, the dreams I'd buried, but that sorrow fueled a new resolve. I wasn't that naive girl anymore. I was Sophia Carter, reborn with the wisdom of a lifetime's mistakes. Ethan's charm, his lies, they wouldn't touch me again. I hung up the phone, my reflection in a nearby window showing a young face fierce with determination. This time I'd choose myself. This time I'd dance on my own terms, and no one, not Ethan, not Emma, would steal my spotlight again. The summer air at Langley Air Force Base was thick with humidity, which clung to your skin like a second uniform. I stood in the communications room, clutching a bulky phone, its cord twisting around my fingers like the memories of my past life. I was 18 again, my heart pounding not from the Virginia heat, but from the weight of a lifetime I'd already lived and lost. My father's voice crackled through the receiver stern, but threaded with a worry I hadn't noticed in my first life. Jacob Thompson, General Thompson's youngest, is a captain at 25. He's got a bright future and a good heart. Isn't he good enough for you? If you stick with Ethan Brooks, don't expect me to call you my daughter. In my past life, those words had stung like an accusation. I'd seen my father, General William Carter, as a cold elitist officer, too obsessed with rank and reputation to understand love. I'd stormed out of this room, tears streaming, and run to Ethan, begging him to prove my father wrong. If I cut ties with Dad, would you still love me? I'd asked, my voice trembling. Ethan had pulled me close, his breath warm against my ear. I love you, Sophia, not your father's stars. I'd believed him, clinging to his promises like a lifeline, blind to how he'd used my trust to climb the ranks. I saw the truth reborn with the clarity of a lifetime's betrayal. My father hadn't been cruel, he'd been right. Ethan was a parasite. I'd been too naive to see it. My grip tightened on the phone, my knuckles whitening. The memories flooded back decades of sacrifice supporting Ethan's widowed mother and siblings, giving up my dream of dancing with the National Arts Ensemble for a man who'd left me to die alone. I saw the hospital room, the flat line of the monitor, Ethan's cold order, no resuscitation. The pain of that betrayal burned, but it was tempered by something new, a fire in my chest, a resolve to rewrite my story. I wasn't that girl anymore who'd traded her dreams for a lie. I was Sophia Carter, reborn by a cosmic force that had seen my unfulfilled dreams and granted me a second act. The universe had spoken and I was listening. Dad, I said, my voice steady despite the tears welling in my eyes, I'll listen to you. The words felt like a vow, not just to him, but to myself. I hung up the click of the receiver, echoing like a gavel, sealing my decision. My reflection in the room's small mirror caught my eye, 18, young, unscarred, but with a fierceness I hadn't known in my first life. I wiped my tears, each one a release of the grief I'd carried for decades. I mourned the girl who'd loved too unquestioningly, but I celebrated the woman I was becoming, one who'd choose her own path. Outside, the base buzzed with activity soldiers, drilling jets roaring overhead. A liaison officer, Captain Sarah Mitchell, leaned against the doorframe, her expression soft. General Carter still doesn't approve of Ethan. Huh? Can't blame him. You're his only daughter, Sophia. No father wants to see his kid hurt by a guy like that. Her words hit like a punch, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. In my past life, I'd accused my father of being out of touch, a relic of military tradition, who couldn't understand my heart. I'd even cried to Ethan, Dad's become one of them, an elitist who looks down on people like you. Ethan had nodded, feeding my resentment, knowing full well that my father's harsh words had come from a place of love. He'd exploited that rift, using my father's name to open doors while I drifted further from the man who'd raised me. Now I saw it clearly. My father, a battle-hardened veteran of Desert Storm, had seen through Ethan's charm from the start. His warnings weren't about status, they were about character. Ethan had known my father's soft heart would never truly disown me, and he'd played me like a pawn. The realization stung, but it also freed me. I turned to Sarah, forcing a smile. No more talk about Ethan. Dad set me up with Jacob Thompson. I said yes. Sarah's eyes widened, a grin spreading across her face. Jacob, the youngest captain in the army. He's not just accomplished, he's a total catch. Good call, Sophia. Ethan's nothing on him except a knack for hanging around Emma Lane. Her words stirred a memory from my past life. Ethan's favoritism toward Emma had been blatant, carrying her gear, saving her extra rations, always prioritizing her over me. I'd dismissed it as camaraderie, believing his lies about their sibling-like bond. But Sarah's comment cut through that delusion, reminding me of the truth I'd ignored. I nodded, my smile genuine now. Yeah, I'm done being the fool. Inside, my heart churned with a mix of regret and determination. I'd spent a lifetime chasing Ethan's approval, but no more. This was my second act, and I'd write it for myself. The mess hall at Langley Air Force Base was a cacophony of clattering trays and laughter, the smell of coffee and grilled burgers filling the air. I stood in line, my tray balanced in hands that still felt new, unmarred by the calluses of my past life's labor. I was 18, reborn, but the weight of my memories made me feel decades older. Every face around me was familiar soldiers I'd known in my first life, some who'd pitied me, others who'd whispered about Ethan's apparent preference for Emma Lane. In that life, I'd been too lovesick to notice, too eager to believe Ethan's excuses. Now my eyes were wide open and I saw everything. I'd just sat down with my meal when Ethan stormed in his face, a mask of righteous anger. Emma trailed behind, clutching his sleeve like a damsel in distress. Sophia, he barked loud enough for the entire mess hall to turn. Why'd you take Emma's meal vouchers? You know she's struggling. The accusation hit like a slap, and for a moment I was 18 in my past life again, shrinking under his gaze, desperate to explain myself. But that girl was gone. I stood, my voice calm but firm. Emma gave me those vouchers herself, Ethan, to make up for stealing my mother's heirloom necklace. The room went silent. Ethan frowned, his certainty wavering. Emma doesn't have enough as it is. She sends half her rations home. Why would she give you anything unless you pressured her? Emma's eyes glistened with tears, her voice trembling. It's fine, Ethan. Sophia's dad is a general. I don't want trouble. Her performance was flawless, designed to paint me as the spoiled bully. I'd have crumbled in my past life, apologizing to save face. But not this time. I stepped onto a bench, my voice carrying over the crowd. Emma stole my mother's necklace, a keepsake from when she died giving birth to me. I caught her wearing it in our dorm. She begged me not to report her and offered the vouchers as repayment. Two dormmates, Lisa and Megan, stepped forward. It's true, Lisa said. Emma took the necklace and promised to pay Sophia back. Sophia didn't even want the vouchers at first. The crowd murmured, eyes shifting to Emma, whose face flushed crimson. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he doubled down. Sophia, you're lying to make Emma look bad. Is this how your father raised you? His mention of my dad was a calculated jab meant to guilt me into submission. In my past life, it would have worked. I'd have run to him begging for forgiveness, convinced I was the problem. Now I saw the manipulation for what it was. I met his gaze, my voice cold. Why do you always bring up my father, Ethan? You mention him more than I do. If you want to talk about parents, talk about your own. Didn't they teach you to get the facts before accusing someone? The crowd erupted in whispers, some stifling laughter. Ethan's face reddened, but I wasn't done. And since we're clearing things up, we're done, Ethan. I'm through funding you, your mom, and your siblings. Those vouchers, I pulled them from my pocket and handed them to the cafeteria staff. Extra meals for everyone, first come, first served. Cheers broke out, soldiers scrambling for the food. Ethan's expression turned ugly, his voice low. You're making a mistake, Sophia. You'll regret this. He turned to leave, Emma scurrying after him, but I caught his glance back, expecting me to chase him. I didn't move. As the mess hall buzzed with excitement, I sat back down, my heart racing, not from fear but triumph. I'd stood up to Ethan for the first time, exposing his lies and reclaiming my power. But beneath the victory, a quiet ache lingered. I'd loved him once, poured my heart into a man who'd never deserved it. The memory of my past life, decades of supporting his family, giving up my dance career, dying alone, threatened to pull me under. I pushed it away, focusing on the present. I was free now. That freedom felt like a spotlight warming my skin. Later that day, I walked across the base, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I passed the training field where in my past life Ethan had favored Emma during drills, gently guiding her while slamming me to the ground, mocking my pain. How can you call yourself a soldier if you can't handle this? He'd said. I'd believed I deserved it, that I wasn't tough enough. Now I knew better. Ethan's cruelty wasn't about strength, it was about control. My father had seen it, warned me, but I'd been too stubborn to listen. I thought of him now, his gruff voice on the phone, his love disguised as discipline. I vowed I'd make it up to him, not just by choosing Jacob, but by becoming the woman he'd always believed I could be. The Langley Air Force Base training field was alive with the rhythm of boots on dirt, the sharp barks of drill instructors echoing under the Virginia sun. I stood among the recruits, my muscles taut, my mind sharper than ever. Reborn at 18, I carried the weight of a lifetime's mistakes, but today I felt lighter, unburdened by the blind devotion that had once chained me to Ethan Brooks. In my past life, I'd been a shadow in this field, my dancer's grace dulled by Ethan's constant criticism, his favoritism toward Emma Lane a daily wound. With my memories intact, I saw through his facade, and I was ready to rewrite my story. I adjusted my gear when Ethan's voice cut through the noise laced with accusation. Sophia, why'd you bully Emma again? He strode toward me, Emma trailing behind, her eyes downcast in a practiced show of fragility. The other soldiers paused, their curiosity drawn to the drama. Ethan continued. You took her meal vouchers loud enough for the entire field to hear. You know she's got a family to support. In my past life, I'd have shrank under his gaze, stammering apologies to avoid his wrath. I'd believed his lies, that Emma was just a friend, that I was too sensitive, too selfish. But not today. I squared my shoulders, meeting his eyes. Emma gave me those vouchers herself, Ethan, to repay me for stealing my mother's heirloom necklace. The words landed like a grenade, and the crowd murmured. Emma's face paled, but she played her part, clutching Ethan's arm. It's okay, Ethan, she whispered, her voice trembling. Sophia's dad is a general. I don't want to cause trouble. Her performance was meant to paint me as the spoiled daughter of privilege, a bully picking on the underdog. I'd fallen for it in my first life, chasing Ethan's approval while the base whispered about my arrogance. I saw the manipulation for what it was, a script they'd rehearsed to keep me in line. I stepped forward, my voice clear and unwavering. Emma stole the necklace my mother left me when she died giving birth. I caught her wearing it in our dorm, and she begged me not to report her. She offered the vouchers as repayment. Two dorm mates, Lisa and Megan, pushed through the crowd. It's true, Megan said, her tone firm. Emma took the necklace and promised to pay Sophia back. Sophia didn't even want the vouchers at first. The murmurs grew louder, eyes shifting to Emma, whose tears now looked less convincing. Ethan's jaw clenched, his certainty cracking. Emma's struggling to feed her family, he insisted. You pressured her, Sophia. Is this how your father raised you, bullying your comrades? His mention of my father was a calculated jab meant to guilt me into submission. In my past life, it had worked. I'd run to him begging forgiveness, convinced I was the problem. But Reborn, I saw the truth. Ethan used my father's name to climb the ranks while painting me as the villain. I met his gaze, my voice icy. Why do you always drag my dad into this, Ethan? You mention him more than I do in a year. If you want to talk about parents, talk about your own. Didn't they teach you to check the facts before accusing someone? The crowd stifled laughter, and Ethan's face reddened. I wasn't done. And since we're clearing things up, we're done, Ethan. I'm through funding you, your mom, and your siblings. I pulled the meal vouchers from my pocket, memories of my past life flashing, decades of sending my paychecks to Ethan's family, their disdain for me despite my sacrifices. I handed the vouchers to a nearby cook. Extra meals for everyone, first come, first served. The soldiers cheered, scrambling for the food, their approval starkly contrasting with Ethan's scowl. You're making a mistake, Sophia, he hissed. You'll regret this. He turned to leave, Emma hurrying after him, but I caught his glance back, expecting me to chase him. I stood still, my heart pounding with triumph. As the crowd dispersed, I sat on a bench, the adrenaline fading into a quiet ache. I'd stood up to Ethan and exposed his lies, but the victory was bittersweet. I remembered my past life, loving him, believing his promises, giving up my dance career for a man who'd left me to die. The pain lingered, but it fueled my resolve. I wasn't that girl anymore. I thought of my father's warning on the phone, his voice stern but loving. Jacob Thompson's a better man. In my first life, I'd dismissed him, accusing him of elitism. Now I saw his wisdom, his love disguised as discipline. I'd make it up to him by choosing Jacob and becoming the woman I was meant to be. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the field. I stood brushing dirt from my uniform, my dancer's grace returning with each step. I was free, and that freedom felt like the first note of a song I'd forgotten how to sing. Ethan's lies couldn't touch me anymore. I was Sophia Carter, reborn by a cosmic second chance, ready to claim my spotlight. The Langley Air Force Base training field buzzed with intensity, the late afternoon sun glinting off sweat-soaked uniforms. I was in the middle of a close combat drill, my muscles straining as I sparred with a partner, when Ethan's voice cut through the chaos. Sophia, let's see if you can handle this. He'd volunteered to pair with me, his smirk betraying his intent. In my past life, these drills had been torture. Ethan favoring Emma, gently guiding her while slamming me to the ground, mocking my pain. How can you call yourself a soldier if you can't take this? He'd taunt. I'd believed I deserved it, my confidence eroding with each bruise. I was ready to face him, reborn with a lifetime's wisdom. He lunged, grabbing my arm with unnecessary force, twisting it in a grappling move meant for real combat, not training. Pain shot through me and I stumbled, my vision blurring as I hit the mat. The squad leader shouted, Brooks, ease up, she's got a dance performance. But Ethan sneered, tightening his grip. She needs to toughen up. I gritted my teeth, memories of my past life flooding back, Ethan's cruelty, his lies about Emma, my broken body in that hospital bed. I refused to break again. Before I could counter, a shadow loomed and Ethan's weight vanished. A tall, broad-shouldered man yanked Ethan off me, tossing him into a muddy training pit with a thud. Cheers erupted from the surrounding soldiers. I looked up, my breath catching. Jacob Thompson, now a captain at 25, stood before me, his uniform splattered with mud, his eyes blazing with anger and concern. What kind of man bullies a female soldier? He said, his voice low but sharp. If you want to fight Brooks, spar with me. Ethan, scrambling in the mud, knew he was outmatched. He charged anyway, his flashy moves easily dodged. Jacob hooked his leg, sending him back into the pit, the crowd roaring with laughter. Jacob turned to me, his expression softening. He offered a hand, pulling me to my feet with gentleness, contrasting Ethan's brutality. He said, Sophia Carter, it's been years. A warm smile broke through. Still need a sidekick. My heart skipped, memories of our childhood flooding back. We'd grown up together on the base, sharing meals at his mother's table, fighting over the last slice of pie. Jacob had been a scrawny kid, constantly sick, but I'd teased him into eating, promising he'd grow tall enough to be my criminal partner. When his family transferred to Fort Bragg, I'd felt a quiet loss buried under my infatuation with Ethan. I grinned, brushing dirt from my shoulders. Jacob, when did you get so tall? He crouched slightly, his eyes twinkling. Is this better? You used to say I needed to eat more to keep up with you. The crowd dispersed, but their whispers lingered, noting Jacob's protectiveness, Ethan's humiliation. As we walked to the barracks, Jacob's voice turned serious. I heard about you and Ethan. I'm sorry, Sophia. I should have spoken up sooner, but I thought you were happy. His honesty disarmed me. In my past life, I'd ignored Jacob chasing Ethan's empty promises. Now I saw the boy who'd cared for me grown into a man who'd risk his reputation to defend me. I was blind, I admitted, my voice soft. But not anymore. Inside my heart churned with gratitude and regret. I'd spent a lifetime loving the wrong man, missing the one who'd always seen me. Jacob's presence felt like a melody I'd forgotten, stirring hope I hadn't dared to touch. We stopped by the mess hall and he shared a memory. He said I wrote you letters after we moved, his cheeks flushing. Never sent them. I was afraid you'd chosen Ethan for good. His vulnerability touched me, a stark contrast to Ethan's manipulation. I wanted to tell him everything, my rebirth, my past life, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I squeezed his hand. You're here now. That's what matters. As we parted, Ethan's glare followed me from the edge of the field, Emma at his side. Her eyes narrow with jealousy. I ignored them, my focus on Jacob's retreating figure. In my past life, I'd let Ethan's cruelty define me, but now I felt my dancer's grace, returning each step a note in a new song. I was Sophia Carter, reborn by a cosmic second chance, and with Jacob by my side, I was ready to dance into a future I'd choose for myself. The Langley Air Force Base gymnasium was transformed into a festive haven for my 19th birthday, its stark walls softened by streamers and fairy lights strung up by my old friends from the military compound. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the scent of grilled hot dogs and the thrum of a classic rock playlist. I stood among familiar faces, my heart lighter than it had been in either of my lives. Reborn at 18, I carried the scars of a past life where I'd sacrificed my dreams for Ethan Brooks only to be betrayed. Now surrounded by friends who'd known me since childhood, I felt a warmth I hadn't realized I'd missed. Jacob Thompson, the boy who'd once been my scrawny sidekick, now a towering army captain, stood at the center of it all, his presence a steady anchor in my new reality. Jacob wheeled out a two-tiered chocolate cake, its candles flickering like tiny stars. He said, I'm making a selfish wish first, his grin boyish yet earnest. I plan to celebrate Sophia's birthday every year for the rest of our lives. The crowd cheered, but my eyes locked on his, a rush of gratitude swelling in my chest. And in my past life, Ethan's indifference had overshadowed my birthdays. Once I'd brought a cake my father sent only for Ethan to invite Emma Lane and let her blow out my candles laughing as she smeared frosting on my face. It's just a joke, Sophia, he'd said, dismissing my hurt. Now Jacob's words felt like a promise, a melody that drowned out those painful memories. As the crowd sang happy birthday, Jacob leaned closer, his voice low. I meant what I said, Sophia. I've always wanted to be by your side. His honesty disarmed me, stirring memories of our childhood. We'd grown up on this base, sharing meals at his mother's table where she'd tease us about fighting over the last biscuit. When his family moved to Fort Bragg, I'd felt a quiet ache, but my infatuation with Ethan had buried it. In my past life, I'd ignored Jacob chasing a man who'd never deserved me. Now, reborn by a cosmic second chance, I saw the depth of Jacob's care. He admitted I wrote you letters after we left, his cheeks flushing. Never sent them. I thought you were happy with Ethan, and I didn't want to interfere. His vulnerability cracked something open inside me. I'd spent decades in my past life loving the wrong man, blind to the one who'd cared for me all along. I wasn't happy, I said softly, my voice trembling. I was lost, Jacob. But I'm not anymore. The words were a confession, not just to him, but to myself. I was rewriting my story, and Jacob was part of it, a part I'd overlooked for too long. My heart ached with the weight of missed chances, but it also sang with hope. I squeezed his hand, the warmth of his touch grounding me. The moment shattered as Ethan stormed through the gymnasium doors, his face pale with rage. Sophia, come outside. We need to talk. His voice was a blade cutting through the festive air. My friends tensed, but I held a hand, my voice calm. Whatever you have to say, Ethan, say it here. He clenched his jaw, expecting me to follow him like I had in my past life. Fine, he snapped. You've fallen low, Sophia, staging this party to make me jealous. Men and women drinking in the dark this capitalist cake, it's proof of your corruption. He reached for the cake, intending to knock it over, but my friends moved faster, blocking him. Are you insane, Lisa? My doormate snapped. It's Sophia's birthday, and Jacob organized this. What's it to you? You weren't invited. Ethan's eyes widened, his bravado faltering. It's your birthday, he stammered. I laughed coldly. Why would I tell you we're done, Ethan? You don't get to ruin this. I thought of my first life when Ethan brought Emma to my birthday, letting her blow out my candles and laughing as she humiliated me. I stood tall, surrounded by friends who saw through his lies. Jacob stepped closer, his presence a quiet strength. You heard her, Brooks. Leave. Ethan's face twisted, but he backed off, muttering about reporting me for conduct unbecoming. Lingering by the door, Emma shot me a venomous glance before following him. As the music resumed, I turned to Jacob, my heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. For this, for everything. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. You deserve it, Sophia. Always have. Inside, I felt a shift, a release of the pain I'd carried, replaced by a melody of hope. I was Sophia Carter, reborn, and with Jacob by my side, I was ready to dance into a future I'd choose for myself. The Langley Air Force Base parade ground was quiet under the evening sky, the stars above Virginia mirroring the resolve burning in my chest. I stood outside the barracks, my uniform crisp, my mind sharper than ever. At 18, I'd broken free from Ethan Brooks's manipulation, exposing his lies in the mess hall, and reconnecting with Jacob Thompson, the childhood friend who'd become my anchor. But the past wasn't done with me yet. Ethan had his own cosmic second chance and wasn't letting go without a fight. He approached me at dusk, his face a mix of desperation and bravado. Sophia, we need to talk, he said, his voice low but urgent. I crossed my arms, my gaze steady. We've said everything, Ethan. But he stepped closer, his eyes wild. What if I told you I've lived this life before? Would you believe me? My breath caught. The cosmic voice that had granted my rebirth had hinted at rare alignments, second chances for souls bound by unfinished fates. Ethan was one of them. He launched into recounting our past life, our marriage, his rise to colonel, his pride in Emma's fame as a dancer. He said we had a son and daughter, Sophia, his voice thick with nostalgia. You were happy. His words were a knife twisting in the wounds of my past life. I remembered the hospital room, his cold order to let me die, and the news broadcast, showing him with Emma and their children. You said you were infertile, I shot back, my voice icy. You lied, Ethan. I gave up my dance career and my dreams to support you and your family, and you left me to die alone. His face crumpled, but he pressed on. I made mistakes, Sophia, but I loved you. I see that now. Marry me again, but you have to drop the dance captain role. It's not for you, Emma's better suited. His audacity stunned me. I'd have wavered in my past life, desperate for his approval. I'd given up the lead dancer role for Emma, believing Ethan's claim that it was for our future. Later, he'd blocked my chance to lead the arts ensemble, citing his mother's health. You're meant to be a wife, not a leader, he'd said, shackling me with love's name. Now reborn, I saw his words for what they were, control, not care. You don't love me, Ethan, I said, my voice steady. You love what I gave you, my father's name, money, and sacrifices. I'm done. Ethan's eyes darkened, but before he could retort, Jacob appeared, his captain's uniform gleaming under the streetlights. Problem, Brooks? He asked, his tone calm but edged with steel. Ethan bristled. Stay out of this, Thompson. Sophia's my wife. Jacob pulled a document from his pocket, his expression unyielding. Not anymore. The brass approved our marriage application. Sophia and I are getting married next month. Bring a red envelope or show up for the wine. The words hit Ethan like a punch, his face paling. My heart raced not from fear but from joy. Jacob submitted the application days after we reconnected, and his decisiveness in starkly contrasted sting with Ethan's manipulation. I threw my arms around Jacob, overwhelmed. We're getting married, I whispered, tears prickling my eyes. In my past life, Jacob had died young, killed in a conflict I now knew I could change. His letter found after his death had revealed his unspoken love for me, a love I'd been too blind to see. Now reborn, I wouldn't waste a moment. The barracks erupted in cheers from nearby soldiers, my childhood friends among them, their smiles warm. Sophia, where'd you find a captain for a fiancé? Lisa teased. Share your secrets. I laughed, tugging Jacob's arm. Who needs a sidekick? I've got a future husband. Ethan, still standing there, sputtered. Sophia, you can't do this. You love me, I know you do. His desperation was pathetic, a shadow of the man I'd once idolized. I turned to him, my voice cold. "You're wrong, Ethan. I loved a lie. I'm happy now without you." Jacob's hand tightened in mine, his presence a reminder of the future I was building. Ethan's shoulders slumped, but he muttered, "You'll regret this," before storming off. I watched him go, my heart steady. Inside, I felt a quiet triumph, a melody of freedom growing stronger with each step away from my past. I was Sophia Carter reborn, and with Jacob by my side, I was ready to dance into a life I'd chosen unshackled by Ethan's lies. The Langley Air Force Base was quiet under the early evening sky, the distant hum of jets fading into the soft chirping of crickets. I stood outside my father's office in the command building, my heart pounding with nerves and resolve. At 18, I'd broken free from Ethan Brooks' manipulation, exposed his lies in the mess hall, and reconnected with Jacob Thompson, my childhood friend and now fiancé. But the weight of my past life lingered, not just Ethan's betrayal, but the rift I'd created with my father, General William Carter. In that life, I'd dismissed his warnings about Ethan, accusing him of being a cold elitist officer who couldn't understand love. Now, with the clarity of a cosmic second chance, I saw his stern words for what they were, love disguised as discipline. I was here to make things right. I knocked, the sound echoing in the empty hallway. "Come in," my father's voice called, gruff but familiar. I stepped inside, the scent of polished wood and old coffee grounding me. He sat behind his desk, his general's stars glinting on his uniform, his face lined with years of service. His eyes softened when he saw me, a flicker of surprise breaking through his usual stoicism. "Sophia," he said, setting down a report. "Didn't expect you here." I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly. "Dad, I need to talk. About Ethan, about everything." In my past life, I'd stormed out of this office countless times, slamming doors and hurling accusations. I'd called him out of touch, a relic who cared more about rank than my happiness. I'd run to Ethan, believing his promises over my father's wisdom. "If I cut ties with you, will you still love me?" I'd asked Ethan, desperate for his approval. He'd held me close, whispering, "I love you, not your father's stars." But it was a lie. Ethan had used my father's name to climb the ranks while I drifted further from the man who'd raised me alone after my mother died giving birth. Now, standing here, I felt the weight of those mistakes and the chance to heal them. "I was wrong, Dad," I said, my voice breaking. "You saw Ethan for what he was, a liar, a user. I didn't listen. I thought you were against me, but you were protecting me." Tears stung my eyes, and I let them fall, each one a release of the guilt I'd carried for decades. "I'm sorry for pushing you away." My father stood, his chair scraping the floor. For a moment, he was silent, his expression unreadable. Then he crossed the room and hugged me, his arms strong and steady. "You're my daughter, Sophia," he said, his voice thick. "I only ever wanted you happy. Seeing you with Ethan tore me up, knowing he'd hurt you." I clung to him, the warmth of his embrace erasing years of distance. I'd let Ethan drive a wedge between us in my past life, feeding me lies about independence and revolution. "We're building a new world, Sophia," he'd said. "Your father's stuck in the past." I'd believed him, thinking my father's disapproval was about status, not character. Now I saw the truth. My father, a Desert Storm veteran, had seen Ethan's deceit. His harsh words were a shield, not a sword. "Jacob's a good man," he said, now pulling back to meet my eyes. "He's got honor, Sophia. He'll stand by you." I nodded, wiping my tears. "I know. We're getting married next month. But there's something else." I hesitated, then plunged forward. "I want to transfer to the front lines with Jacob. I know it's dangerous, but I joined the army to serve, not just to dance." I'd been sidelined to the National Arts Ensemble in my past life, pressured by higher-ups who pitied my father's only child. I'd let Ethan convince me to stay in the background, giving up leadership roles for his sake. I wanted to fight, to prove I was more than a general's daughter. My father's eyes searched mine, then he sighed, a mix of pride and worry. "You're my daughter, all right. Stubborn as hell." He walked to his desk, pulling out a transfer form. "If you win, I'll be waiting at home," he said, signing it with a flourish. "If you lose, I'll bring you home myself." His words were a promise, a bond rebuilt after years of misunderstanding. I hugged him again, my heart full. "I'll make you proud, Dad." As I left his office, the stars outside seemed brighter, mirroring the hope inside me. I was Sophia Carter, reborn by a celestial reckoning, and with my father's blessing, I was ready to face the future, not just for myself, but for the family we'd become again. The desert stretched endlessly before our forward operating base, its dunes shimmering under a relentless sun. I stood beside Jacob Thompson, my fiancé, my uniform heavy with gear, my heart steady with purpose. Reborn at 18. I'd broken free from Ethan Brooks' lies, reconnected with my father, and chosen a path I'd been denied in my past life. Now at 19, I was on the front lines of a critical operation in the Middle East, a conflict I knew from my first life would claim Jacob's life. The cosmic voice that had granted my rebirth, a rare alignment of fate for souls, wronged by betrayal, had given me a chance to change that destiny. I wasn't just fighting for my country, I was fighting for us. The mission was high-stakes secure, a strategic outpost held by insurgents. Jacob, a captain at 25, led our unit with a calm authority that inspired confidence. But I wasn't just his fiancé, I was a soldier with a lifetime's knowledge. Growing up, I'd sat in on my father's war room discussions, absorbing strategies while other kids played. That knowledge had gone unused in my past life, my role confined to the National Arts Ensemble. Now I'd analyze the battle's turning point from Jacob's last letter written before his death in my first life. He'd written that the enemy flanked us at dawn, using the eastern ridge to hide their advance. I'd shared my insight with Jacob, sketching the ridge's vulnerabilities on a map. He'd listened, his eyes sharp with trust. "You're sure about this, Sophia?" he'd asked. I nodded. "I know it sounds wild, but I feel it in my bones." He didn't question me further. His faith in me contrasted with Ethan's control. We devised a plan, reinforce the eastern ridge, set up early warning systems, and counter the flank before it could begin. As dawn broke, the enemy moved exactly as I'd predicted, their shadows creeping along the ridge. Our unit was ready, ambushing their advance with precision. Gunfire erupted the air, thick with dust and the crack of rifles. Jacob and I fought side by side, his commands steady, my movements instinctive. A grenade landed nearby, and he pulled me behind a barricade, his hand firm on mine. "Stay sharp, Sophia," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. I nodded, my heart racing, not from fear, but from the thrill of fighting for something real. The battle was fierce, but our preparation turned the tide. By midday, the outpost was ours, the enemy retreating in disarray. Jacob and I stood on the ridge, catching our breath, the sun glinting off his sweat-streaked face. "You saved us," he said, his voice low with awe. How did you know I couldn't tell him about my rebirth, the cosmic force that had rewound my life? Instead, I squeezed his hand, just a hunch. But inside, my heart soared. In my past life, Jacob died here, and his letter was the only proof of his love. He stood beside me alive because I'd rewritten his fate. Weeks later, we returned to Langley. As decorated heroes, our unit commended for valor. The base buzzed with pride, soldiers clapping us on the back as we walked through the gates. But there was more. My body had changed, a subtle swell in my abdomen confirming what I'd suspected. I was pregnant, our child, and a symbol of the future we'd fought for. I told Jacob under the shade of an oak tree, his eyes widening before he pulled me into a fierce hug. "A family," he whispered, his voice thick. "You've given me everything, Sophia." His joy mirrored my own, but it was tempered by the weight of my past life's losses, decades spent childless, believing Ethan's lie about his infertility. Now I carry life, a testament to the second chance I'd been given. As we prepared for our wedding, I reflected on my journey. In my past life, I'd been sidelined to the arts ensemble, my strategic mind wasted, because higher-ups pitied my father's only child. Ethan had kept me there, blocking my ambitions with talk of duty and love. "You're meant to be a wife," he'd said, denying me leadership roles. Now I'd proven myself on the battlefield, my father's pride evident in his signed transfer form. "You're my daughter," he'd said. "Make me proud." I had, and I'd keep doing so with Jacob by my side. The desert had tested us, but also forged us, two souls bound by love and valor, ready to face whatever came next. The Langley Air Force Base parade ground glowed under the warm September sun, a stage for the heroes' welcome ceremony, honoring those who'd returned from the front lines. I stood among my fellow soldiers, my uniform crisp, the weight of a newly pinned medal heavy on my chest. Beside me, Jacob Thompson, my fiancé and now a decorated captain, radiated quiet pride, his hand brushing mine in a silent promise. Reborn at 18 by a cosmic second chance, a celestial alignment granting new life to those wronged by betrayal. I'd rewritten my fate, saving Jacob from the death that had claimed him in my past life. We'd fought side by side in the desert, turning a doomed battle into a victory that earned us both commendations. Now back at Langley, I felt the swell of our unborn child, a symbol of the future I'd fought for. But not everyone shared in our triumph. Whispers rippled through the crowd, tales of those who hadn't reached this moment of glory. I overheard soldiers gossiping about Emma Lane, whose star had fallen as swiftly as it had risen. In my past life, Emma had soared to fame as a dancer in the National Arts Ensemble, her success built on my sacrifices and Ethan Brooks's favoritism. I'd given up the lead dancer role for her, believing Ethan's lies about our future. Now reborn, I'd exposed her theft of my mother's heirloom necklace, unraveling her carefully crafted image. The truth about her background had surfaced too. She'd falsified her enlistment papers, hiding her father's criminal past as a convicted smuggler. The military launched an investigation, freezing her record and suspending her from the arts ensemble. She married some washed-up platoon leader, a soldier murmured nearby, her voice tinged with pity. The guy's in his 40s, divorced and has 3 kids. Rough type word is he's got a temper. Another added, she left the army to have his baby. I saw her last week in town, lugging a kid on her back, another in her arms, and haggling over groceries. Can't dance anymore, not with that belly. The image was stark. Emma, once poised and untouchable, now weighed down by a life she'd chosen to escape scrutiny. In my past life, I'd protected her secret, believing in fairness despite her betrayal. She'd repaid me by painting me as a villain in her memoir, a jealous rival who'd persecuted her. Now her choices had caught up with her, and I felt no guilt, only a quiet resolve to move forward. Ethan's fate was no better. In my past life, he'd climbed to colonel, using my father's name, leaving me to die alone in a hospital bed. I'd cut him off, Reborn refusing to fund his family or fuel his ambitions. Without me, he'd faltered. The soldiers' gossip turned to him next. Brooks got careless, one said. I got distracted, constantly checking the news from the front and muttering about dates, and walked right into a reversing supply truck. The accident had crushed his leg, leaving him with a permanent limp and injuries that ended his field duties. Reassigned to logistics, he hauled equipment for the arts ensemble, a shadow of the man who'd once commanded attention. I saw him struggling with a crate near the stage before the ceremony. Our eyes met, and he froze, his face a mix of shame and desperation. I'd have softened in my past life, offering him a way back into my life. Now I held his gaze unyielding. He ducked his head, stumbling over a cable and nearly falling. The other soldiers barely noticed, their focus on the heroes being honored. As I took my place on stage, Jacob's hand steady in mine, I felt the weight of my journey. I'd been reborn to reclaim my dreams, not to dwell on those who'd stolen them. Ethan's downfall was his own doing, a consequence of the lies he'd spun in both lives. The ceremony began, the base commander's voice booming through the speakers, Lieutenant Sophia Carter, for exceptional strategic insight and valor. Applause erupted, and Jacob's proud smile warmed me. I stepped forward, accepting my medal, my heart full. In my past life, I'd been sidelined to the arts ensemble, my potential buried under Ethan's control. Now I stood as a war hero, my father's pride evident in the crowd. I scanned for Ethan, finding him in the darkest corner of the field, his eyes fixed on me, filled with regret. He'd lost everything, his career, his pride. Me. I turned away, focusing on Jacob, on the life we were building. The cosmic force that had reborn me had given me this moment, and I wouldn't waste it on the past. The Langley Air Force Base banquet hall was alive with celebration, its chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables laden with roast beef and apple pie. The heroes' welcome dinner buzzed with laughter, soldiers toasting our victory in the desert. I sat beside Jacob Thompson, my husband-to-be, my hand resting on the slight swell of my belly, where our child grew, a symbol of the future I'd fought for. Reborn at 18, by a celestial reckoning, I'd rewritten my fate, saving Jacob from death and breaking free from Ethan Brooks' betrayal. Now at 19, I was a decorated war hero, my heart full of love and purpose. My father, General William Carter, sat across from us, his stern face softened by a rare smile. Our reconciliation had healed a wound from my past life, and his presence here felt like a final note in a song of redemption. The arts ensemble performed on a makeshift stage, their music a vibrant echo of the dreams I'd once held. My old teammates danced radiantly, their faces familiar from years of shared rehearsals. In my past life, I'd given up the lead dancer role for Emma Lane, believing Ethan's lies about our future. Now I watched with pride, not envy, knowing I'd chosen a different path, one of valor, not just performance. The dancers caught my eye, their smiles warm with admiration. Sophia, you're a legend now, one whispered later, squeezing my hand. We're so proud. Their words stirred a quiet joy, a contrast to the isolation I'd felt in my first life, when Ethan's manipulation had driven a wedge between me and my peers. As the music swelled, my friends from the ensemble urged me to join the toast. Come on, Sophia, drink up, they teased. Jacob laughed, raising his glass. I'll drink for her. Sophia's under complete protection now. She's carrying our baby. The table erupted in cheers, but a crash interrupted the moment. As a logistics aide, Ethan had dropped a tray of dishes, his face pale. He sank to the floor, burying his head in his hands, sobs shaking his frame. I regret it, he muttered loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I ruined my life. The kitchen supervisor rushed over, dragging him away, his cries echoing faintly as the door closed. No one followed. They focused on the celebration, not his despair. I turned to Jacob, his hand warm over mine, his eyes full of love. In my past life, Ethan had left me childless, claiming infertility while building a family with Emma. His betrayal had ended with my death alone in a hospital bed. Now reborn, I'd chosen Jacob, whose love had proven steadfast in both lives. His letter from my past life, written before his death, had revealed his devotion, a love I'd been too blind to see. I always watched you, Sophia, he'd written. I wished I'd been brave enough to tell you. He was here alive, and we were building a family. The thought brought tears to my eyes, not of sorrow, but of gratitude for the cosmic second chance that had brought us together. My father stood, raising his glass. He said to Sophia, my daughter, my hero, his voice steady but thick with emotion. The room joined in glasses, clinking voices warm. I'd pushed him away in my past life, believing Ethan's lies about independence. Ethan had said that your father's stuck in the past, driving a wedge between us. Our bond was now whole, his pride a melody that harmonized with mine. I met his eyes, nodding a silent promise to keep making him proud. Jacob leaned closer, whispering, You've given us all a reason to celebrate Sophia. His hand rested gently on my belly, and I felt our child's future, a life free from the shadows of my past. As the banquet continued, the dancers invited me to the floor. I hesitated, memories of my past life's lost dreams surfacing. Ethan had mocked my dancing, praising Emma, while I swept floors in his mother's house. He'd said that Sophia's great at sweeping, not dancing at a gala, laughing as I stood humiliated. Now Jacob pulled me to my feet, his smile encouraging. Show them, Sophia. I moved to the music, my steps tentative, then fluid, my dancer's grace returning like a long-forgotten song. The crowd cheered, and for the first time I danced for myself, not for applause or approval. Ethan watched from the shadows, his face etched with regret. He'd lost everything. His career pried me while I'd gained a life I'd never dared dream of in my first life. The cosmic force that had reborn me had aligned the stars for this moment, a finale where I stood in the spotlight I'd earned. With Jacob's hand in mine, my father's pride shining, and our child's future growing, I knew my life would only get brighter. I was Sophia Carter reborn, and this was my new beginning, a symphony of love, valor, and dreams reclaimed.